Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. I had this issue yesterday where one of my cats ate the other earring that I was wearing here. I don't know if they ate it or if they just moved it or where it went, but I can't find it and I'm pretty upset because all these earrings I bought in France, so never getting those back again because I have no desire to go to Paris ever again in my life, if I'm being very honest. No offense to people who like Paris. Okay, so I'm pretty, I'm like a little bit sick, I think, because I have this tickle in my throat, so that's not good. I'm really trying to keep up a positive attitude for this channel, but I'm not gonna lie, it feels pretty impossible right now. So I've been pretty delayed on getting back to people who have been trying to contact me. I apologize for that, but that's kind of where I'm at. As much as people are telling me to stop worrying about the housing thing, that's kind of all I can freak out and think about. There are so many layers to that. I'm a little bit stressed out about moving all my crap. I hate moving. I've actually moved a lot in the last few years, just like with living abroad and stuff, and from my apartment in Finland to another apartment in Finland, and having to store the stuff in the meantime between getting those two apartments, and it was really a lot of work, and I just don't like moving. I hate it more, like I don't think anybody could hate moving more than me. Some people say they do, but I really, really do. My mom is trying to remind me that the situation of paying $2,000 a month is temporary. On one hand, I'm really excited about the prospect of having a nice new apartment that can be set up really cute, and I can just stay in my apartment all the time and feel safe and comfortable there because it's not how I feel in my own house. It's sad, but I'm just being honest. I feel a little bit safe and comfortable in my own room, but at the same time, it's certain things like I just feel like I don't have energy to do anything right now. Like, I really need to do laundry. I'm leaving the house to go work at the restaurant, and I have gone out and seen people, which has helped a little bit, but the idea of me being in a house where I no longer feel comfortable, maybe I'm grappling with the idea of it does make sense to just dish out the $2K temporarily. What I would really like to see happen is if by some miracle I could find something that I could live in with my mom, and I've talked about this a little bit on the Russian side, but not as much on the English side, which is that I really would like to be able to support my mom in some way. And I was talking to my dad about this. Obviously, my parents are divorced, and he, on one hand, thinks it's nice, but doesn't really like my motives for it. I'm going to be pretty forthcoming in admitting that my mom is largely the reason my parents are divorced. However, one of the things I respect a lot about my mom is she's at this point where she's now able to look back with remorse on her past actions and actually expresses sincere regret and apologies towards me and my brother with respects to what happened. So in this way, really, my mom has become one of those people in my life who is kind of like a role model or somebody I look up to and admire and respect. And I'm going to be very honest in saying that was not the case for almost my entire life. My mom has become like a best friend only in the last year, but I also think a lot of this has to do with the fact, and I try not to think about this because it does make me upset, that I have like a big girl job now. And a lot of my mom's insecurities were founded around the fact that she was never able to support herself financially. Now, I've talked about this, I think, I can't remember if it was in English or in Russian, but divorce is one of the biggest predictors of poverty in women, at least in the US. I don't know how it works in other countries. I know this is like, wow, child support is a thing, but it is a thing that happens. So one of my mom's qualms or gripes is that being raised religiously, she felt like her only objective was really to get married off and to not really find a way to support herself financially. Now, I'm sure this is going to open a whole can of worms because this gets really complicated in terms of generational gaps, family expectations, religious community expectations, and traditional versus more progressive values. I'm trying to think of what direction to even go in from here because I feel like this is very loaded. So, as I've said quite a few times, I feel like my role model growing up was a man, so I grew up to be more like a man. And it's kind of interesting. I'm going to be very honest in admitting I don't appreciate a lot of the comments where it's like, you know, my values are out of line and that's why, like, I'm not with somebody. Also, like, you guys don't know about my relationship status, okay? I don't publicize that on here. I'm not married. That doesn't mean that I'm single, right? And I'm not going to say whether I am or not, okay? Partially because I think it's bad for business. This is a business after all. You need to keep this in mind, and I'm still American at the end of the day. But yeah, it's just like the point of me talking about these issues, right? Because I think issues are interesting to discuss, is that I just think shedding light on, what's going on, what has gone on, what other people think, because a lot of it is I do give my opinion. I also do talk about other people's opinions and things that I've seen, and I try to tie them all together into some sort of insightful dialogue or soliloquy or monologue, if you will, whatever it is, just me talking to myself and then reading the comments and trying to respond to them appropriately in subsequent videos. So with my mom, I understand that there's a great sense of regret over the fact that she didn't feel like she was able to build a career for herself at a younger age. She's about 54 now and is finally doing pretty well for herself. It's been a struggle. My dad thinks she's had spending problems in the past. I'm not sure I'm going to necessarily deny that, but I also stand by the fact that people can choose how to spend their money. And just because somebody wants to spend their money to have nice things, while I don't understand it, going into debt for it is one thing. But if that's what they choose to spend their money on, fine. I choose to spend my money on travel. I don't buy new clothes. I hardly go out to eat. I don't go to the movies. I don't really do a lot of fun things while I'm in the US in order to facilitate my traveling. And it's literally been like that since I was 16 years old. In fact, I used to not have a smartphone for like the longest time, longer than anybody else, because I didn't want the monthly internet bill because it helped me travel and buy plane tickets from, a fairly young age, like in my teen years. That's what my priority was. So I don't think people should be judged in terms of what their priorities are with spending money. However, I do think that being in credit card debt because of those choices is undoubtedly bad. Yesterday, I heard a discussion with about, let's say, a 60-year-old saying that kids these days don't know how to save money. Now, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. I think that part of it is just money is not as, this is probably one of the first times in U.S. history, no, it definitely can't be, but recent U.S. history where we've had this sort of runaway inflation problem after COVID. And, I was just thinking this morning about, like, if I had just done the normal thing and not cared about learning Russian and just graduated sooner and bought a house, like, I would have been golden. And then I wouldn't be sitting where I am today. But at the same time, those experiences I've had have made me who I am today. So, whatever, there's that. But, and also if I had been in one place, maybe I would have been in a marriage already, coulda, shoulda, woulda. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at is the fact that I think that sometimes growing up religiously, you can sort of have these unrealistic expectations for the fact that, especially as a woman, a marriage is kind of intended to save you. Now, what does that mean? Save you from financial burden, obligation, responsibility. That's a big one. But if you want to think about it from a biblical perspective, it does say that a man who does not support his family, which would be his wife, is worse than a man without faith. So while I have seen this growing up, one of my best friends who I've grown up with in my religious community married a guy who did not support her, and she was instead supporting him. So part of me feels like after I've seen these sorts of examples, I do get a little bit scared because on one hand, I don't want to be taken advantage of. And I also just don't really feel like at this point that somebody can save me if I haven't saved myself. So what do I mean by that? I think looking to somebody to complete you through marriage is not really a good way of going about it. I think I've seen too many of the bad sides of marriage to believe that it is the end-all be-all of what's going to make me happy in life. I think it has the potential to add happiness, but I don't think that it's the only thing. So I remember when I was in Kyrgyzstan in 2021, one of my friends had just gotten married. She wasn't that young, especially by Kyrgyz standards. I want to say she was like 30 and she was getting married to a guy who was like 33. And I went and saw my one friend, so let's think, 2021. This was like 4 years ago. Let's say I was like 25. And then I saw one of my Russian friends, ethnically Russian friends who lives in Kyrgyzstan. And I, told him why I was in Kyrgyzstan. It was for the wedding. And he's like, oh, people getting married and they're all going to be divorced in 3 years anyway. And I thought, how cynical. I think that he also comes from a divorced parents background. But yeah, I kind of get what he's getting at because there is sort of this risk where I think in religious communities, people are pressured to get married younger for very obvious reasons. Okay, we're not going to get into that. I think it's very obvious. And because of that, people sometimes are rushing into relationships and marriages and these large commitments without really discovering who they are. And I think that that can be challenging, especially when you start growing apart rather than growing together, which can happen to some people. Now, obviously, because of religious values, there are some people who will just stay in these marriages and silently suffer, and I think that's really sad too. But it is a thing that people do, for better or for worse. I can't pretend to know whether I think that in the long run that's going to make you happy or not. I think it's a balancing act, this whole meeting your own needs versus being selfless and trying to meet somebody else's needs. Because if you are preoccupied with meeting somebody else's needs at the expense of your own needs, a lot of times that can lead to diminished self-worth and ultimately depression and you being kind of a jerk to everybody else in your life. I'm speaking from experience because I've seen this. So yeah. And in fact, one of the things that I think about is how relationships can really change over time. I think about the people I was closest with are now not the same people I was closest with years ago. And a lot of this, sadly, is because of jealousy. And I want to make another video about why jealousy is stupid. But it felt like the more I started to achieve, really, I need some big air quotes on that because I know a lot more people who are a lot more successful than me. So this one really bothers me. But, instead of being happy for me, I felt like people were upset that I got something that they wanted, which is sad. Again, topic of another video because I really do want to talk about why I think jealousy is stupid. That's going to be a long one. So, yeah, I've seen a lot. Moving on with this topic. I think that now that my mom has had to reinvent herself after 2 failed marriages, she's now divorced twice, having her own financial stability has become very important to her. And again, what I've talked about on the Russian side is how I have this dream of sort of getting a house that I own, that my mom lives in, because I feel very strongly about wanting to support her financially. Why? Because even though she made poor choices, and she is definitely at fault for all of the financial ruin that she ended up in, jokingly, because she did not successfully enough gold dig, jokingly, not jokingly, I'm going to be pretty honest with that. But I'm going to stand by the fact that also all women are secretly gold diggers. Hot take. You can debate me on that if you want, but I still think it's true. Yeah, I think men are so aware of this. Like, I was thinking about this earlier today. Like, I can't even tell you the number of random men I've had show me their bank account, and I'm like, why? Like, is this supposed to make me want to marry you or something? Like, I don't really know the incentive. But I think it's so ingrained in men that actually this desire to provide. Although I know not every man feels this way. I was talking to, I have this one Finnish BFF, and who's a guy, and he's like, I don't feel the desire to, provide for somebody else. Like, my girlfriend can provide for herself. So, I don't know. Maybe it's not every single person, but maybe part of it is also, maybe it's nature versus nurture. I don't know. Maybe it's both. Can't pretend to know fully, because I'm not a guy. So I don't really, think fully like a guy as much as I have masculine qualities, whatever. I also think that women developing masculine qualities has become something that's become more necessary for survival in the world today, based on getting away from these traditional values in a more progressive world. We also need to keep in mind that I'm highly educated, right? I have a master's degree and I'm not going for a PhD. So I think my experience is going to be a little bit different than a lot of other people's. Okay. So, with my mom, I just would really, people are not retiring as much these days because people are living longer, people don't have enough money, and I don't know if or when my mom is going to be able to retire because she's now basically just started her big career arc in her 50s. So, part of me owning a house and letting my mom live there for as long as basically until she probably dies, to me would be a really big way to pay back and give back what my mom gave to me growing up and being able to stay at home with children, because I know that that's something that I'm never going to be able to give my kid. Why? I just don't think I'm going to end up in that financial situation where that's a viable option. I do work from home, so I have that going for me, and if I'm able to do that for a long time, that could be a positive where I'm at least present for my kid, although I'm not sure I'm going to be cognitively, mentally, and emotionally present for them, so that could be kind of another situation. So, yeah, but for my mom, I think she has a lot of, again, qualms around the fact that she felt like she was kind of ushered into needing to get married to be provided for, and that was the path in life she was supposed to take, and instead of sort of self-actualizing and supporting herself and being able to be self-sufficient. That is very important to her and has become a very strong value for her. So when I think about my own values, and I actually love this story, because I don't remember this. There are a lot of things I don't remember. I love hearing the things people remember that I don't. So I've talked a lot about my friends who work at NASA in Texas, and one of them, the wife of this couple, she was telling me that she remembers me watching some video when we were out to eat somewhere, and I don't remember the context of why this video was playing, but it said something about how your brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. So if you travel before the age of 25, it's going to basically expand your mental horizons and make you more open-minded. And I started thinking about that because, yeah, that's exactly what I did. Was I kept traveling really until, I mean, I still travel basically, but like living abroad well until the age of 25. And I do see the way that has changed the way that I look at the world. If you think about the fact that I grew up in the US, which does have more traditional values compared to a lot of other Western countries like Europe, Australia, yeah, those kinds of places, versus living in Kyrgyzstan, which is a Muslim country, which is going to have naturally more traditional values, also with it being more Asian, like in Central Asia, having more collective values, even probably stronger collective values than Russia itself, you know, being part of the Soviet Union and all that at some point. So I think, yeah, I've been exposed to a lot, and obviously I think that my own views are sort of a blend of all of these different things. I also think that obviously moving between a bunch of different places isn't very conducive towards lending itself to a stable long-term romantic relationship. So, you know, there is that to consider. But I also think that because of these experiences I've had later in life, I'm just so multicultural maybe in a way that it would be very difficult for me to sort of just look at being in the US, getting married, and sitting in a house as being like the end all be all of what I feel like I'm supposed to do in life. Like, I wouldn't feel fulfilled in that way. So I think a lot of my goals long term, like, I would love to learn Finnish. I would love to become a Finnish citizen, and I would love to raise my children in Finland. Like, these are goals that I have for myself, regardless of, you know, just getting married for the sake of getting married and settling down where I was born, because that maybe for me just sounds very boring and unfulfilling. So another thing I'd like to mention is back when I was working at NASA, I had this mentor named Chris. He was the first guy who was basically like my manager when I was at NASA. And he was this Hispanic guy. He wasn't too much older than me. And I remember, was trying to explain something to me about how girls who are raised religiously have a very skewed sense of what a relationship is supposed to be like. And I think it was getting at something along the lines of kind of waiting for, as they call it in Russian, a man on a white horse, like a prince on a white horse. That's what it is. And like, yeah, I kind of get that, but the reality is there aren't enough princes. And as I talked about, the whole general trend, women are getting taller, they are becoming more successful, and they want men who either match their success or are more successful than them, and that can be something that's pretty hard to find at this point in time. So I think that there are just so many factors to look at when considering this. I think a lot about my mom and her example and what she went through, and how I am starting to be more empathetic and understand why me getting a career in the US was one of the most important things for her feeling good about the way that her child was raised. Although to me it sounds kind of ridiculous, but because, like, as I say, I make just as much money at the restaurant as I do at my real job, so there is that. So I don't really know what else I want to get at with this, but I do think that there is a component to challenges around being raised religiously. I also was thinking last night while I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, because it often happens to me because of the stupid housing thing, caused me a lot of stress, not gonna lie. It's literally what I wake up thinking about. But anyway, I was thinking about how the world is also becoming more polarized. You can especially see that with the whole Republican versus Democrat thing in the US. I'm not as well versed in other political realms in other countries. I'm not even well versed in the US political realm, but it feels very like you have to kind of subscribe to this all or nothing mentality. And okay, not like I watch TV that much. Okay, I'm going to pause this really quick. Hold on. Okay, again, afraid it was going to delete. And not like I watch TV that much, but I was watching Emily in Paris, and it was talking about how Americans are very uncomfortable with the gray zone, whereas Europeans are much more comfortable with it. I totally agree with this. And I think one of the other things that has become more difficult about religion in the US is, I think during the era when my parents were growing up, there was a lot more gray zone people, I'm going to put it that way, whereas now it's become a lot more polarized, whereas if you are not, like, super involved and, like, super outwardly dedicating your appearance to the fact that you're like all in with this religion thing, it's like you have no place in it. And I've never subscribed to this, to be very honest. I kind of jokingly have always called myself a religious minimalist because it's like I do what I need to do to be religious, but beyond that, like the whole being very social in a religious context is very draining for me, right? And like now that I like have the autism diagnosis, I like understand a bit more about like why that's the case instead of just wondering why being around people in a community was difficult. And it's not even just like in that community, right? It's like I feel like in general I will have people who like want to be friends with me, want to be closer to me. I throw it out there all the time. The funniest thing on my neuropsych eval was feels uncomfortable when people want to be emotionally close with me. Like that is really true because I feel like, especially now that I've had the experience in Finland, when I've opened myself up to people, I've gotten really hurt, and I'm sure that's normal, and in some ways I commend myself for being brave enough to do that, but at the same time it's just not something that I have the emotional and cognitive and financial reserves to do because I can't function that well when I'm like emotionally distraught, and like right now I need to support myself. Like yes, I've become my mom, so I don't know. I think that it's hard. Like I think that it's really hard, and not that I come from a collectivistic culture, but I always think about this, and I can't remember where I heard it from, that in Indian culture, it's like you don't marry the person, you marry the family. And I've thought a lot about how my choice in who I marry is going to affect my family and my relationship with my family, and even who I am as a person, right? I've seen it a lot where somebody marries somebody and they rub off a lot on that person. So I want to be very careful that the person who I'm with is sharing values with me. And one of the things I've thought a lot about is just that somebody is very like a kind person, because people can pretend to be religious. It doesn't mean they're good people. I hate to say that, but like it's true. Like, and this is why I say also, you don't watch what people say, you watch what people do, because that's really when you're going to find out the kind of person that they are. People will say all sorts of crap to get you to do this, that, and the other thing, but at the end of the day, what are they themselves doing? So, I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think there's that discussion to be had. I think a lot about how my choice of a partner will affect my family and my relationship with my family. I don't think that's necessarily what's causing the hesitation. I think it's the fact that I know that I'm not living true to what I want, right? So, like, I'm in the US and I know I don't want to be here. And this is very hard. This is very, very hard. Part of it's I'm telling myself that when Diesel dies, I'm peacing out. That's so sad. But, like, honestly, it's just, like, when I think about why I've been at home for so long, it's like people do not understand the love I have for my dogs and the love I have for my sister. And everything else I just kind of deal with because of that love. So, yeah, I think it's important to, let love conquer all. Maybe it sounds corny, but sometimes I even wonder if I'm, like, capable of... Am I capable of love? I feel like a robot. Yeah, no, honestly, I do feel that way, not gonna lie. But it's hard, and, I feel like I should do another video about, like, kind of trying to explain how autistic people process emotions, because I'm aware that it's not the same as, like, neurotypical people, and maybe it could be interesting. I'm thinking about getting more into, like, a mental health series, talking about how my own experience with, like, what I feel, so, not what I feel, but yes, my different diagnoses and what those feel like inside of me, because maybe that could help people understand and bridge that gap in understanding, like, yes, I'm a real person, and yes, these are the things I go through. But yeah, so, I don't know. I just felt like talking about that because I was thinking a lot about it because of, like, stuff going on with my mom. Like, I know my mom's really proud of me for having, like, a good job, right? I feel like I spent a lot of time talking about how I realized my job's really not that good based on when I run all these budget calculations, but, because I told my mom, I was like, you need to be making over 6 figures to live comfortably in New Jersey. And she's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, yeah, that's not what I make. And so, I don't know. Sometimes if I could go back in time, tell myself one thing, it would have been to negotiate my budget before I accepted my job offer. Because, man, I've been suffering a lot this last year because I didn't do that. Yeah. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, man. So, all I have to say is learn from your mistakes, move forward, and forgive yourself. Because if you don't, nobody else will. So that's everything I have for today. Probably going to take a little break this weekend because seeing family, need to do laundry, need to finish my stuff for work. I'm gonna work on the weekend, yeah, of course, because it's how I am. I'm also, like, kind of sick, so I need to lay around a bit. Like, I've already been doing that all week, but I gotta do it some more. So, that's it. Okay. Until my next video. Bye.